Welcome to the Dire Wolf Show, where we believe that America is exceptional and that our constitutional rights should never be infringed. I am Dire Wolf. On our show, we bring you the truth and debunk fake news. If you love laughing at the insanity of the regressive left, sit back and relax. Boy, do I have a show for you. Welcome back, Wolfpack. Dire Wolf here for another weekly news recap, but it's going to be a special one. Behind enemy lines on YouTube where speech is not free and the truth is demonetized. Alongside me is my Nazi vampire Russian bot, Fox Trevize.
Also alleged homosexual.
I misspelled that word on purpose.
Yes.
That's the way I spelled it.
Great to be here, and in a slight correction, rather than being a weekly news recap, we're doing a yearly news recap. Whoa.
Yes.
Get at me.
This show is actually going to be the top fake news. We got 19 stories we're going to cover of the fake news from 2019. Plus a couple other stories.
And you guys know how long it takes us to cover 8 stories, so strap in.
Exactly. So I want to thank everyone who makes this show possible. Thank you for those who donate to us financially. That is all of you. Ori Main, Nathan Cameron, Tetris Freak, Slowpoke, Golem, Lone Fury, Thundra Erican, who is female, Strong Arm, Hellraiser Zaylon, and the White Lion. Hey there, Tetris Freak. I see you there with the GIF. Also, even if you don't donate to us financially, you can help us out a lot by simply watching, following, and sharing our content. As you know, YouTube is doing the best they can to hide us, and some of the topics we're going to be covering today, they definitely are going to make our video not appear in search results. The very first topic, actually. So they might even take the channel, the live stream down. They've been doing that on this topic, so just heads up. So what you can do to help us out is go to that go to that share button, and that a few seconds of your effort will help us grow and help our more people see our content. We very much appreciate it. Please share. We are, of course, collecting every $2 to get you an entry into our upcoming raffles. We are doing it frequently, but every $2 will get you an entry. Anyways, before we get into our big story on the fake news from 2019, let's go into our the World War III hysteria.
World War III! Ah! Oh, we wanted to do a story about it, not just be historical. Okay, well...
Yeah, not go hysterical.
Oh, okay, all right. I misunderstood.
It's been a hashtag going around.
Yes, I've
what's
noticed. That about? So, we have... the media has accused Trump of starting World War III, or World War II, too. That has been kind of one of the main talking points ever since was on Thursday that we had the missile strike killing one of Iran's top generals who was planning military action against our military, and that was after we had to defend our embassy in Iraq. There was a lot of talk about this being, an absurd escalation type of a thing, and that kind of got the internet. Internet got a hold of that, and there was a lot of memeing about World War III going around, and also discussion about the draft and whether or not we'd be seeing a draft again.
So that's based on a lot of scaremongering and misinformation. So first off, the escalation to killing one of Iran's generals is an escalation in response to a lot of steps leading up to that, and there's still more steps that would be required to get to war. But I think most people will have misconceptions about what war with Iran would actually be. We're not there yet.
Be gone from me, you soy boy beta cock. The transaction is complete.
Dire, I've been feeling like crap lately because of work, so I had to start my 4-hour spanking time fairly early tonight. I am in hour 2.5, so with any luck it'll be done by the end of your show. Congratulations, you'll be the last thing I see.
Wow, that is
What an
very
honor.
dirty.
What an honor.
And what an honor.
Yes.
Thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. So thank you, Slowpoke, for the $11. So we're not quite at war yet. There's lots of levels of escalation and to get to war. First, we got to understand why this is happening. They've been attacking naval ships. They've been attacking, oil tankers. They've been attacking our allies, and they attacked us directly and killed an American contractor. Trump has to respond. If he doesn't respond, then they're going to be emboldened to keep escalating. This escalation, one that was going to hurt them badly, was actually had the intent of stopping them from going and doing kinetic action again. He said, when you go kinetic on us, you'll go kinetic on you.
Yeah, and that was one of the kind of key revelations that we had. That was an actual fact that was released after our show on Thursday, where we discussed this last time. Last time this happened right before our show on Thursday, and so we didn't have a lot of facts, and there was a lot of speculation. And obviously, over the course of the rest of the evening and on Friday, the mainstream media took it in the absolutely most uncharitable way possible, saying, oh, Trump's out there just being a, Wild West. He's just gunslinging. He's not even thinking. He's just firing them off because he felt like he was having some ice cream and felt like he might as well launch some missiles while he was at it. But the truth of the matter is that it came out that there was very good intelligence that this guy, the Salami guy, he was planning on several attacks on U.S. assets. Now, again, the counter to this has always been, well, why is there U.S. assets over there to begin with? And that is a conversation that can be had at certain points, but regardless of why they're there, they are there, and there was plans to strike them. The other side note on that is that one of the strike that was on the embassy, which I don't think that it was confirmed that Salami had anything to do with that, but it is suspicious that he was in the area when it happened, and he is known to be associated with the groups that were attacking.
The other guy that was killed was actually the guy who led the protest, quote unquote, attack against the embassy, and he was meeting with that guy at the airport when they both got killed.
Yeah,
so that's part of the assumption there, is that it was him behind it, or he's the next person out in charge above that guy who actually led it.
So I mean, the point being is people can question whether or not we need to have military assets in the region. That's a fine discussion.
We shouldn't be there.
That's a fine discussion to be had. But to say that we should not have an embassy and that we should not defend an embassy, that's a little above and beyond. If you really think that we should be pulling all diplomatic connections out of the Middle East, that's a rather extreme position. And to say that we should just roll over and let an embassy be overrun and we should just pull out the embassy as well, that's a little bit more of an extreme position. And the media is conflating having the embassy there with also having troops in the area, and they're different things, and they were both attacked and they both warranted a response, especially the fact that, again, the Salami guy was talking about he was having plans to have future attacks on the U.S. So one of the things that Trump said was, as opposed to the early speculation of this being a act of, getting us into a war, Trump was saying, this was preventing a war. There was plans to escalate from Iran to begin with. So us preemptively escalating on that good intel is, people can discuss whether or not they think the intel is good or not, but it is what it is.
So Trump, and I very much approve of this, wants to get to the point where we just pull all of our troops out of there. That doesn't mean you don't have an embassy there anymore. We still, if we want to have them be a modern country that has diplomatic ties with us, we need to have an embassy there. And that, yes, there's Marines at an embassy to defend the diplomats there, to defend the facility, just like other embassies around the world. But I very much agree that we need to remove our troops. Now, that doesn't mean there won't be American contractors there, because foreign governments, like the Iraqi government, will often hire Americans that are either American contractors or are ex-military to continue to train their forces on how to do different things. So there might still be Americans at Iraqi bases. Like the base that was attacked was not an American base. It was an Iraqi base with an American contractor working in an Iraqi unit that was killed.
So, and again, that's that would be as opposed to an actual military presence there. They were attacking something that was not a U.S. military presence. It was, again, a more or less a diplomatic mission. And if people want to start, again, the media is conflating the diplomatic positions with the actual, military hardware in the area. And if people want to say that we need to be pulling out diplomatically as well, that there should be no U.S. contractors giving any kind of advisement to the military over there that's trying to get a handle on their country, try and pull back the rubble into some semblance of an actual stable state. That's something that you guys are going to have to. You're gonna have to do a lot more explaining on that, and that's not the discussion that's actually being had in the media. The discussion in the media is just Orange Man bad, so his decisions are bad.
And here's why the American soldiers need to leave, because if they're eventually, with multiple levels of escalation before this point, but if eventually we lead to war because Iran is getting desperate with their economy and their government collapsing, they might choose to try to instigate war, right? That's what they've been doing. They've been trying to put pressure on us by taking acts of war against us to try to get us to the point where we think that there's no other option but war, and then trying to get us to cave and take off sanctions, right? That they want us to capitulate. That's what the Democrats have done in the past under Obama. Instead of saying no, you've crossed our line, we're going to make you pay for it, they've capitulated and given in and given them money, took off sanctions. We need to remove our troops. So if ever they get to that point, they most likely will want to instigate war. We won't be pulled into it. We can sit back and say, hey, we have nothing in the area for you to attack. We're not going to get into a land war with you. There's no benefit in us having a land war with you, right? Yeah. And that way, if they attack one of our facilities around the world, we can do an airstrike, punish them for crossing that red line, but not get pulled into a war. And if you're worried about Russia and China gives zero shits about Iran. They are only propping up Iran because they're a thorn in our side. They're not going to go into a world war to defend Iran. They also don't like Iran. They're the ones putting Muslims in internment camps because they can't stand them. They don't support Iran. Russia uses them for influences, but is not willing to go into a world war over them instigating a war. So World War III is off of conflict with Iran is a ridiculous assumption.
And the hope, as Dyer was just saying, the hope is that they would have a internal revolution prior to us needing to have some kind of external force applied to them, beyond economic. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Iran, prior to their revolution that has the mullahs in charge, back in the 80s, I believe, they were rather secular, modern,
Western,
nearly Western. Yeah. Yes, they were it was not something that anywhere close to what it looks like now. But those people, a lot of them are still there. A lot of them they remember. They've told their children about what it used to be like, and they would like to get it back. That is why they were celebrating in the streets when we took out Salami, because they know what he's done and they don't like him. Yes. And that's why there has been continuous protests in the streets, burning down government buildings, which is a little bit more than protests, in Iran for going on months now. And, as opposed to other Middle Eastern countries, when they have internal revolutions, it's usually just a different side of an extremist coin. Iran, they have a much better chance if they have an internal revolution of putting together some kind of stable secular government. I'm not an expert in that area, but it's my understanding that would be it's more better for them to have an internal revolution and set that up. Whereas other countries in the area, when they have revolutions, it's more of a roll of the dice.
So the people have a strong incentive to topple their own government and replace it with something that's at least U.S. friendly or U.S. neutral, because immediately the entire world market will open up to them and they will be prosperous again. And any government under that condition will be more successful because they have so much oil, right? Now, so it's the goal is that our pressure, if we keep the pressure up, they will never be able to get to nuclear technology, and their government will collapse before they get to that point, and then they'll have a reformation, and then we will no longer have the risk of a nuclear armed Iran, and possibly gain a good actor that's a trading partner in the future.
Yeah. The immediate future is extremely uncertain, but the long-term outlook on this could be favorable.
There will be conflict. There will probably be retribution, but there will not likely be a World War III, because they can't actually go to war with us. They, as much as they'd like to, they're not going to have the support, and they are suffering from having been deprived of resources for a very long time now.
I know I was seeing somebody was doing a review of military assets between us and Iran, and the only thing that they come even close to having numbers comparable to ours on is Air Force, and they're still 10-1, or 1-10, 1-R10, and that's got to be old stuff. That's not our new stuff.
So last time we went to,
you can count them on one hand.
Their entire Air Force would be destroyed in the first week of conflict, most of it in the first couple of days. Last time we went into conflict with them, we blew up their planes before they got to above 2,000 feet altitude. We were waiting with planes with missiles ready to go. As soon as they took off, we launched missiles and hit them. So I'm not really worried about the Air Force. It's the short. Now, a lot of people were worried by the left-wing media spreading this hysteria of World War III. So much so that it led to a bunch of people going to the Selective Service website, and so many people are looking at the website trying to look for ways to avoid getting enlisted through a draft.
Yeah, the Selective Service is the site that manages the draft, for those of you that don't know.
Right. So for those who don't know, you actually are required, if you're a male in the U.S., to register for Selective Service between ages 18 and 26, I believe.
That's sexist.
And they actually did say that was sexist. There was a court order saying that it is currently a sexist, unconstitutional policy.
No, that court case didn't say it was sexist. That court case said that it was unconstitutional, which is pretty goddamn sexist.
Right, that's what I said. Both those things. Yeah. It was sexist and unconstitutional. But they haven't done anything with that. Just because it was ruled unconstitutional, they didn't change it. Yeah. But that aside, if you are a male between those ages, you are required to register for Selective Service, and if you don't, you actually could be held. You could be fined or put in jail for it. Not that they probably would do that. There's no pressure to do that. But a lot of people are worried there's going to be a draft. That's not likely to happen unless Russia or China is actually making an assault on the U.S. mainland and no soldiers are left to defend, right? That's not likely to happen. Again, if there's a war with Iran, they're not going to do a ground war. We're not going to try to conquer or to take over Iran. We would likely only do punitive strikes for anything they do to us. We don't want to conquer them because the Trump administration is very opposed to regime change through force. So it's basically let the people reform their own government, and we are just going to defend our interests when we're attacked.
Yeah, it's as opposed to previous eras, you're going to have a very difficult time instituting a draft. The people in those age groups are not as rah-rah America as they once were decades and decades ago. We had a much more cohesive idea of what it meant to be an American. Maybe I don't hesitate to use the word indoctrination, but we certainly had a more institutionalized fervor for the country 70 years ago. The cohesiveness of the country now, it's not something that would have any kind of support for the draft. It would be very, very much opposed. It was opposed the previous time it was used for Vietnam quite heavily. I think it would be unmanageably opposed this time. But that's not to say it's not without some benefits. The New York Times reported that a history professor was reviewing the draft and said that it could actually be a pretty good thing because the current all-volunteer military force is much more likely to recruit people from the working class, she said, which have higher percentages of non-white Americans. That's right. She says that the America's volunteer military is too black, which is basically like slavery, and a draft could even out those numbers with more whites. I love the New York Times. That's right. We're too black to go to war.
I mean, it's just as bad as when Ozzy says we don't have enough females. We got to have 50-50. You know?
Well, I can't think of a single other institution where the left is like, blacks are overrepresented and that's a bad thing. Like, every other time, just hitting parity that's not good enough. It's always got to be more.
The irony of this is that they still make the claim that one reason why blacks are disadvantaged is in the past they were not allowed to have military service like whites were in the same level, and thus they lacked the educational benefit and the experience that would help be successful, which would have helped them for generations. So now they're saying they don't want blacks to have that. But before they were saying that them not having it was the disadvantage. But now having it at a higher degree is the disadvantage. Make up your fucking mind.
They don't have a mind to make up.
Yeah. Thunder Erikin said that she would gladly join the military if she during the draft. I'm sure she and many women would, but I don't think that the draft is going to happen unless like China tries to invade.
I'd join the meme war.
You're already drafted in the meme war.
Perfect. All right, we've been skipping around here. Which parts have we not read? You
so we haven't gone into Iran has responded already. So people are making a big deal about Iran having hacked a government website today. They hacked the American Federal Depository Library program, which is the FDLP, which is basically a place where a lot of books are published with the government, apparently. It's not something dangerous for them to have hacked. It's just the website. And they posted a picture of Trump getting punched by a fist that has an Iranian symbol on the cuff, and in the message it says a pro-Iranian threat to America, and the threat reads like this: "We will not stop supporting the oppressed people of Palestine, of Yemen, of the people of the Syrian government." Not the people of Syria, the people of Syrian government, the people of Iraq, the oppressed people of Bahrain, and the true Mujahideen. God damn it. Of Lebanon and Palestine. I find that funny. Not the fact that the website was hacked. It's not a big deal. I find it funny that those are the groups that they say that they are supporting, because those are all of their proxy wars that they're currently fighting. The Palestinian Mujahideen are terrorists that in their core charter, it is their mission is to destroy Israel and kill her people.
Yeah,
these are the terrorists that go in Israel and kill Israeli children, not soldiers. They go in and intentionally target children to kill them.
Isn't claiming your proxies like this kind of showing all your cards?
Isn't it? Yeah. That they also they say that the Palestinian terrorists are oppressed because Israel drops bombs on the launch pads that they shoot rockets from at Israeli civilians. They're not freaking oppressed. They're terrorists that are trying to, destroy another government and take over their land. Then you have the people of Yemen. So Iran has been supporting the Houthi rebels in Yemen. They are a violent, oppressive, religious extremist terrorist group that's trying to overthrow the elected government of Yemen and enforce religious law over the Yemenis people that don't want it. That's who they're supporting. And then there's the people of Iraq. They're saying that they support the people of Iraq, right? Those are the same people that were dancing in the streets when Soleimani was killed. The Iraqis that do support Soleimani in Iran were the terrorists that have been oppressing the Iraqis, which is why they were happy that Soleimani died. They don't support the people of Iraq. They support certain terrorist elements in Iraq. So that's just a few of the groups that they mentioned, and they're basically supporting religious extremist terrorists that are trying to overthrow rightly elected governments around the world.
This is funny to me because it's basically like a Twitter shit post that instead of putting it on Twitter, just nobody saw it. They just put it in a place where no one would see it.
Yeah, who goes to that website?
Like they could have just put it on goddamn Twitter.
I'll be honest with you, I didn't know that website existed until I saw the news story.
The only reason why this is even a news story because I bet you whoever runs that site, whatever government agency that runs that site, probably reported it to like CNN or somebody, and then they picked up the story. But I bet you, I can almost guarantee you that if whoever runs that site, whichever agency runs that site, if they just hadn't said anything and just fixed it, no one would have known.
Yeah, you're right. So I want to point out that this hacking of the FDLP is meant to strike fear in America that there's going to be more hacking in the future. But it actually is way less harmful than what they've already been doing for the last year. The Iranian government has a fairly sophisticated cyber warfare unit because that's all they really can do to us because it takes less money and less effort than actually developing a intimidating military. So they have cyber warfare. It's a way they can hurt us without breaking their pocketbook, which they don't have much money left anyways.
And side note, they get to use all the cool toys that the NSA made because the NSA doesn't know how to keep their guns in their pants, and then they send out malicious code, and it gets captured by somebody. Those somebodies can decompile that code and repurpose it against us. Yay, NSA. Yeah. Thank you. Like, most of the things that attack us, like cyber-wise, those came from us. They were just copied and repurposed. It's not like a missile when you fire it and it blows up and it's done. When you send out malicious code, like the NSA does, that's real cool if they can do that, but they haven't gotten a real good way of having it self-destruct yet, and we have a lot of issues with that.
It is kind of like using a drone to spy on someone and then landing that drone in their in their land and letting them take it, which actually happened. So the Iranian government has been targeting the U.S. government agencies as well as sectors of our economy, including oil, gas, and it's been sending waves of spear phishing emails throughout 2019. So they have been doing this for a while now, and they've been increasing their efforts to try to get malicious code into different governmental computers and parts of our economy. And they very likely can do some disruption, but we also have demonstrated we can do the same thing. We caused a blackout in Iran a while back by attacking their energy grid. So I suspect that one of their ways of getting back at us is going to be causing some slight disruptions using cyber warfare, but I don't think that they can cause any real lasting damage.
And
it's not like they're going to take control of the nukes.
The nukes.
They're on big floppy disks. There's nothing you can do about that.
Yeah, Jesus. My idea, if we did have an uncontrolled issue with their cyber warfare, is just get some drones over there. I think it's probably. I'm pretty sure somebody knows where the fiber lines in and out of the country are, and we just start hitting those. If we can't manage the cyber warfare, which I think we could. But that would be if I was king and I was having that issue, that's what I would do. I would target their communications infrastructure, just isolate the country.
And one thing we need to realize, something I think that certain people on the left, on the Democrat side, are pretending to not be aware of, is that it's not Trump has instigated war with Iran. We are at war with Iran and have been for a long time. We're in 4 different proxy wars with them. We're in an economic war with them. We are currently still fighting them, just not kinetically, directly. We are fighting kinetically against their terrorist proxies.
So to back up that point though, and put that in the context of this attack that killed Soleimani,
Soleimani.
I'm going to call him Salami. That was, so a lot of people are saying that was an act of war because he was, he's number 2 in the Iranian military and stuff like that. The context that they are purposefully missing is that, yes, he is number 2 in the Iranian military. He's also leading God, I can't remember which of their freaking weird names they got. He is leading one of the... Yes, he's leading one of the other terrorist groups in the region. So he was in Iraq when we killed him, which is not Iran. We were authorized to kill terrorists in Iraq, and he was a terrorist in Iraq. It just so happened that he was running, that he was also an Iraqi military official, but he was running this giant terrorist ring on the side.
This guy had a lot of hats. So he was a general in Iran, he was a general in Iraq, and he also was the leader, the top head of a terrorist group that was operating independently of those 2 organizations.
Yeah,
this guy had a lot of hats.
Yeah, so if you're only reading like a fifth of his resume, then it might look a little strange that we're taking out the military officials of countries that we're not officially at war with. But when you look at it in the broader context of what it was that he was doing, and again, there's also the extremely underreported fact that, well, I don't know if it's a fact or so, but Trump is saying, the intelligence community is saying, and we're supposed to trust the intelligence community, right? That there was good intel on that there was planned attacks that this guy was planning and in the process of implementing over the next few weeks. So if you look at it with that context, it is not nearly as insane as what the mainstream media would like to show it as.
Right. What's this next bullet point?
Which one?
Draft.
I already did that part.
Oh, cool. We're good. Any closing shots on World War III?
Closing shots?
Don't worry.
First strike, last strike.
Yep.
I don't know. We're not going to have a draft. I am not any more worried about my day-to-day than normal. I think the likelihood of having some kind of generalized kinetic attack on American soil is pretty low. I know that there was some discussions about, there's been talk on multiple different commentators that Iran's going to start activating terrorist cells here and in Europe. Well, I think that they've been doing that. I don't think that that's anything new. Yeah, I don't think that that's anything new. I don't think that warrants a... I think it just puts it in the forefront of people's minds, so it might seem scarier because you're thinking about it, but I don't think that the actual threat is any more than what it was last week of having a terror cell activate in America. I think that's always been a threat.
We've been stopping terrorist plots in America almost at a rate of 1 per day.
Yeah. So as long as we should be getting even more now because the FBI is not all gummed up looking at Trump. So they've got all kinds of extra resources to be looking at terrorists now. To that being the biggest threat, I think. I don't think that they're much of a threat to actual infrastructure with cyber attacks. I know that we've got some vulnerabilities on that, but I don't think that we're any more vulnerable than what we were before, and I don't think that they're trying any harder than what they were before. I mean, they have entire divisions of their military because they don't have really a physical military to speak of, but they do have a very strong wing of their cyber military, and they have been working very hard at doing what they, doing malicious things to America for a long time. So I don't think, I don't see any possibility of them increasing their threat, because everybody's assuming like, oh, they're gonna gear up for attacking us or something. They're as geared up as they can be. This is Iran at full capacity. What the threat level that we had last week, that was Iran at full capacity. This week they don't have any more to go. They can't turn it up anymore. It's already up at the highest it'll go.
Before we get off here, there was a CNN analyst on Iran who was commenting on Trump's strike on Soleimani, and she said that she saw that Trump making this airstrike as him engineering the complete withdrawal of the U.S. forces from Iraq, and that because he was basically giving up on a direct negotiation to try to reduce tensions that way. There's going to be no more diplomacy. He's gone kinetic. He's not going to try to negotiate with Iran anymore. Not that we were really negotiating with Iran anyways. We basically said no, and we're going to put more sanctions on you. There's no real discussions right now because Iran is not acting like someone who actually wants to make a deal. They're fighting us actively in 4 proxy wars. They don't want to make a deal. They're attacking naval ships. They're trying to shut down the Straits of Hormuz.
Now there is one thing that I am concerned about that I think is a legitimate threat. That is a threat caused from this current situation, and that is that they would actually go through with more strikes against Saudi Arabia, which they did earlier this summer, and it was very, very concerning for a lot of people that we would go to war on behalf of Saudi Arabia, who is the worst goddamn ally that we've ever had.
They're not an ally. Yes, they're a frenemy.
They're not even a frenemy. It is that dog that is just rabid, and you haven't had the guts to put it down yet, but you just need it. So I think that is a legitimate concern that they would do something to Saudi Arabia that was significant enough to require a response. And I will be very. I've been thinking about this the last 2 days. I would be very upset to the point that I would consider my 2020 vote if we went to war on behalf of Saudi Arabia.
I would
that would be
very
absolutely
much
unacceptable to me.
I'd be very much upset with that as well. I don't think that's what would happen if they do attack Saudi. I think Saudi is very capable of defeating Iran on their own. They might use our intel assets, but I don't think they need us to step in. There might be some sort of for show support, but no troops on the ground. No, not our forces deploying. That's probably what would happen, just to show diplomatic support for it. You were attacked. We support you defending yourself, type thing.
I as much as I don't think that there's anything worth spilling blood over there for, certainly least of all is Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, because we're Saudi Arabia is almost no better than Iran, except for the fact that Saudi Arabia just doesn't want to kill us.
Well, not recently. Right. Not recently. I mean, Saudi Arabia still has. I think in all of U.S. history after the revolution, I think that Saudi Arabia has killed the most Americans on American soil.
Might actually be right.
Through their proxy of 9/11, which is, as much as the mainstream media and the left would like to pretend that and the right to a certain extent would like to pretend that is a conspiracy theory, it is not. Saudi Arabia helped fund 9/11. That is a fact. And just nobody in the media cared to really report or talk about it, and the government on both sides would prefer that wasn't true as well. But yeah, they're not worth spending any blood on. And they just attacked us again a few weeks ago in Pensacola. Yeah, I know that was not a Saudi state sanctioned killing, but it certainly happened from one of their key representatives, one of their soldiers. If your soldier abroad doesn't represent you, I don't. Where does the buck stop? Oh, it's just a thing that happens.
Yeah. So I completely agree with you. The only reason why we're working with Iran in any capacity is because they are less of a threat than Iran is. Sorry, working with Saudi because they're less of a threat than Iran is, and we need them to hurt Iran.
And they're a secular force, and they're willing to wheel and deal. So that's,
Yeah. So that said, let's move on to our new year in review top 19 fake news stories of 2019.
Yeah, we were gonna do 2019 fake news stories, but we only have a year to get this done. So, and this is gonna take another 365 days for us to get through this segment.
We're already 40 minutes in. So
yay. All right, we'll run through this. So, the news cycle, as you guys all know, the news cycle is very fast these days, and it is only getting faster. So before we get too far along into 2020, let's take a second to pause and review the biggest whoppers the mainstream media told us in 2019. First up, we have at number 19, which I lost my mouse here. There we go. Number 19, we have impeachment. The news media uncritically reported claims by a whistleblower that were not only unsubstantiated, but proven to be wrong almost immediately after they were released because Trump released a transcript that they were referencing. The media reported it as fact that Trump bribed or quid pro quoed and or threatened the Ukrainian president. This was so wrong that the House did not even include bribery in the articles of impeachment. Throughout this coverage, they also included the lie that there was nothing wrong with what the Biden crime family was doing in the Ukraine. They said that it was okay. That there was absolutely nothing wrong with it, to the point that Anderson Cooper even stated that there was nothing wrong with what the Biden family was doing, that there was nothing wrong with Hunter getting paid $80,000 a month from a corrupt Ukrainian oil company that Biden had protected in the previous administration. Anderson Cooper said that there was nothing wrong about that in the middle of a Democrat debate while he was supposed to be moderating it. That is some big league fake news.
Yes. Number 18 on the fake news for 2019 was "There is no wall." Democrat politicians have boasted, and many liberal news outlets like the Washington Post have claimed that Trump's wall has not been built or that very little of the wall has been built. The truth is that 98 miles have been built. Much of this was focused on areas where the existing fence was not a real barrier. We're talking about like a piece of metal being held up on two ends that you can walk, around, under, or over. It is not an actual barrier to keep you out. So they're actually taking unsecure parts of the border and making them secure. The reason more hasn't been built is because of constant Democrat obstructionism and lawsuits from different liberal states. This doesn't make Trump look bad that the Dems are willing to sacrifice the safety of Americans for political reasons. This argument also totally missing the overall effectiveness of Trump's immigration policy. Trump's stay in Mexico policy and increased funding to other areas of border enforcement has halted the flood of illegal immigration into our country.
Which I'm sure is a story that we'll be covering in the next few weeks here. There's been some really big news on that, on the numbers this year, and how much the illegal immigration flood has come to a halt. I mean, I think there was a lot of people on the right that didn't believe it was possible. There was a lot of people on the left that didn't want it to be possible, but the numbers don't lie. They have almost come to a complete halt with how much has been flooding into the borders, which is one of the reasons why the labor market's so great, because we don't have a bunch of illegal workers coming in here to soak up all the low-paying jobs, which is great. All right, ready? Did I lose you?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Next up, number 17, we have woke films are good, and that critiquing them is racist. Criticism for Star Wars was blamed on misogynistic, toxic fan base. Esquire magazine published an article saying it was the fans that destroyed Star Wars, not Disney. What Esquire and many other left-wing news outlets that share this opinion failed to realize is that it is not the fault of the fans that a movie was not made for them, or that the movie sacrificed quality of storytelling to pander to the regressive left. After the release of The Rise of Skywalker, even left-wing critics had to admit that woke story elements had ruined the trilogy. Oh no.
Yes, and Ghostbusters 3 is a sign that movie producers are starting to realize that the problem is not the fans, it's the injecting of woke politics into movies that is ruining movies.
Of course it is. Alrighty. Next up.
Also, number 16 is Trump voter regret story. The New York Times published a false propaganda story created by a Democrat super PAC, American Bridge. The story was about Mark Graham, who claimed to be a Trump supporter that had been dissatisfied by Trump and was now planning to vote against him in the 2020 election. The truth is, however, that Graham never did vote for Trump, and his story was completely false, fabricated by American Bridge just to create false propaganda against Trump.
The gasp. I can't believe it's not true. Next up, number 15, we have Antifa is anti-fascist. Many in the left-wing media in 2019 defended Antifa, justifying their violence as a response to right-wing violence. Don Lemon, worst journalist of the year, infamously argued that it was all in the name, anti-fascism. They're Antifa, they must be anti-fascist. It's in the name. The truth has been regularly exposed by independent reporters like Andy Ngo, who was one of the many journalists attacked by Antifa this year, brutally so. He still has and will permanently have a brain injury that is from that attack. It was rather brutal.
Yep.
It has been well documented that Antifa have attacked journalists, police officers, peaceful right-wing protesters, and random passerbyers. The older, the better. The more elderly you are walking past an Antifa rally, the more likely they're going to go after you because they need an easy target because they just cannot get the strong ones.
Yes, it is Antifa that are showing up with weapons and armor and in a uniform and going to right-wing events and trying to shut them down. You don't see any left-wing speaking events getting shut down by the Proud Boys or anyone else on the right, or free speech advocates aren't going around and trying to shut down events that are made for liberals. You don't see the right going to campaign rallies for left-wing candidates and trying to attack people going in or trying to prevent them from being able to enter. That has been a phenomenon completely on the left, and it's been Antifa. They're 100% the bad guys, but the news media on the left have been, tacitly approving of them and even encouraging them. They're like telling people to go to, was it Maxine Waters telling people to go to find people in the Trump camp administration and get in their face.
Yep.
Well, this year they actually went to Tucker Carlson's house, didn't they?
I believe that was this year, yes.
Yeah, going in and harassing him at his home. That's the left. You don't see people on the right doing that.
Yep. Alrighty. Next up.
So number 14 was Russian collusion. That could be right? Definitely Russian collusion definitely happened.
That had to be so real. That was. This will probably pop up on the the Russian collusion's really a fake news story of the decade there.
Yeah, I mean that's been the talk of the town for 3 years straight now. So for 3 years, even to present, the mainstream media has continued to propagate the lie that Trump was working for or with Putin, or that he had colluded to steal the 2016 election from Hillary. They continued that lie even after the Mueller report failed to find any evidence that these claims were true. In the absence of evidence, someone's innocent. Just one of the 100 that, according not to the left-wing media, though, it doesn't require evidence for him to be guilty. They just knew he was guilty from the beginning. They started looking for evidence after they decided he was guilty.
It was morally correct.
Right, not factually correct, morally correct. Just one of the hundreds of fake stories produced this year came from BuzzFeed, famous for their fake news on this topic, who claimed that Trump had ordered Cohen to lie about a business deal he had in Moscow related to a hotel. Even before the Mueller report was released, the FBI responded to this claim by BuzzFeed that their claims were false. The FBI uncharacteristically responded to a news story saying, nope, actually, that's not true. Because Cohen was someone that they had interviewed, and the news story in BuzzFeed was saying that in that interview with the FBI that he had said these things, and the FBI was like, no, he didn't. Furthermore, the information that BuzzFeed claimed Trump had wanted Cohen to supposedly lie about was actually public information, and Trump had already acknowledged that public information prior to that date. So why would he have someone lie about something when he'd already acknowledged it to be public, to be true publicly? BuzzFeed had based their claims on anonymous sources who had no firsthand knowledge of Cohen's testimony.
Dyer, your insistence that chains of events must have a linear cause and effect relationship, this idea of before and after, it's very, very colonial of you. I don't know, it might be even a little bit racist for you to assume that time must flow in one direction.
I'm not saying that time must flow in one direction. I'm just saying that...
Are you a time truther?
I'm not. Yeah, I'm totally a time truther. I'm just saying that BuzzFeed trying to innovate how to tell the news by throwing linear time out the window didn't work out well for them this time, because it resulted in them producing obviously fake news.
Well, and that's an example that is one of the running themes with most of the fake news, in this list and in every other list, is that it's you see a lot of these stories that are false because of very easily findable information that refutes it. That's publicly available information. That's if BuzzFeed had just done the teeniest bit of fact checking, they could have realized, like, oh man, we screwed this up, maybe we shouldn't publish it. And that's just, these are just the ones that are easily seen with publicly available information, and we're supposed to believe that the ones that don't have easily publicly available information, that those ones are all correct. And
they really need to stop using anonymous sources of people who have no idea what they're talking about. And then they also love using the phrase a senior administration official, as if that means something, because there's lots of senior administration officials that have never spoken to Trump before.
Is senior administration official, is that even a rank, or is it just like a thing that people say?
Well, by that definition, you could have someone who's an intern working in a administration in a bureaucracy office that's not even in the White House.
I'm actually the Direwolf Media senior producer.
Exactly.
And senior news analyst. And one of the executive writers of the show.
And one of the very underpaid editors for how many errors he has to fix.
This is true. All right. So is that one? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That was kind of a hard one to do too, because obviously we could probably do 2019 fake things about Russian collusion. That was such a large story. The just the two words Russian collusion is kind of a meme where it triggers you to remember just this unrememberable laundry list of things, just in the last 6 months, all the lies about it. But this has been going on for 3 years. I mean, there's no way to really sum up all of that. But there was this idea of the Russian collusion as just this giant umbrella of fake news just baked into this gigantic fake news cake.
The most important part of this fake news cake is that Russian collusion is so pervasive that it's even included as evidence in the impeachment hearings and in the impeachment articles, that even though it's been debunked, it's still being referenced to as if it were true. Thank you for the follow.
Burke
I don't know how to
Yildirim. Burke Yildirim.
Burke Yildirim.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the follow.
We appreciate it. Alrighty. So, I got that one out of the way. Next up, we have Trump spent Thanksgiving tweeting and playing golf. This is from Newsweek. A Newsweek reporter pre-wrote almost a week ahead of time an article claiming that Trump had spent his Thanksgiving tweeting and golfing based on Trump's publicly available schedule of events.
Which we know is always true.
Oh, yes. He would never put his classified his classified and secret things on there. The article was basically what they thought Trump would do rather than what he actually did. In reality, Trump spent Thanksgiving visiting our troops in the Middle East and serving them a turkey dinner. What a nice guy.
Yes. The journalist, I believe, was fired and the editor was demoted.
And as opposed to having a cushy golf outing, the story was after the fact that he actually had a pretty rough flight to get there because it was all under kind of cover of darkness. He was almost kind of trying to sneak away from the press pool in America. They were doing late flights. It wasn't an easy thing for him to do. I mean, yeah, Trump travels a lot, but he's an older guy, and who likes traveling across the pond. If you guys have not been on a flight across the ocean to Europe, that's a hell of a flight. And Trump went a little bit further than that into the Middle East. So it was no easy thing for him to just do that. And it was literally the opposite of the cushy, relaxing golf outing that they pretended like he went on.
And he also most likely did not have a fun landing. Just to be honest with you, when you're landing at a military base as an important official like him, they do what's a combat landing, where they try to make the aircraft as little of a target as possible. First thing they do for the president is shut off all the lights. They land at night and they shut off all the lights on the airfield. So they're landing by basically GPS and instruments only. It's kind of scary as fuck. Can't see the ground.
And they come in pretty hot too, right? I mean, it's not like a real slow landing. It's coming in pretty hot, right?
Right. So then I'm not sure if they did this with Trump, but another thing they often do to reduce the time that you have to shoot at the aircraft is they do a very steep, very fast dive before pulling out of it to land.
and so you're really slamming into the ground at that point, and it's really taking all the probably at the edge of what the landing struts can take.
Well, they pull up and bleed off airspeed before actually touching the wheels to the ground, but it's not comfortable falling out of the sky that fast.
Yeah. It was a surprise. Obviously, he couldn't put that into his public schedule because that would make that base a target. And I'm sure you could speak more to this. I'm sure it would be very exciting to have him come by and give you guys Thanksgiving dinner. Oh no. Did I lose all of you guys? I've lost Direwolf. I'm not sure if I've lost the stream or not. Am I? Chat, let me know if I'm still streaming. It looks like I'm still streaming. Well, I guess I've lost Direwolf. Hopefully it has nothing to do with some kind of Iranian attack.
Hear me now?
I can hear Dyer now. Okay. I was worried the Iranians got you.
You may have. I very much appreciate having him come down there. Obviously, it doesn't make the food taste any better, but it definitely does. It shows that he supports us. And I very much appreciate that. It's one thing having a leader directing you from afar, but a leader that can come and talk to you to your face, it means a lot more.
Yeah, and it was again just to the level of the fakeness of the news. It was saying that he was doing something that was rather. It's not, if he had done a relaxing vacation over Thanksgiving, I don't think that warranted really sticking it to him. It's okay to be a little selfish during the holidays if you want to take some time, but he was literally doing the opposite of being selfish. He went out there to try and show that, he does care about the troops. And, it was at probably some personal discomfort to him. Which is about the most that he's able to actually do without maybe gearing up himself. But I think again, it's just the level of the fakeness of the news is outrageous.
Yeah. Yeah, it's part of the problem is that they aren't trying to report the news. They have this formula now where they're just trying to just produce a negative story on Trump.
Yeah,
That gives them the Trump bump. So they're not really putting a lot of thought into what actually reporting what really happened. It's more about making sure they have something that their editor will like, that something that will be negative towards Trump that their company will be happy with. And the facts, it doesn't really matter as much.
Well, it used to be Orange Man bad. What did he do? Now it's Orange Man bad. What will he do? Like that's the formulas for these stories.
Yeah, definitely. So next story is number 12. Brexit was never going to happen. So more of a international concern, the British and Euro media were convinced that Boris was going to lose his re-election and that the second Brexit referendum would result in Remainers taking power. The media was not only wrong, Boris and the Brexiteers took power in an indescribable landslide. But if I were to describe it, if I would take a shot at it, I'd say it was huge. Huge. With some Remain parties almost being wiped off the electoral map entirely.
Yeah,
so
you have the Liberal Democrats as one of the parties over there, which is it doesn't quite mean what it means over here when I say the word Democrats, but that's one of their parties. Like the name of the party is the Liberal Democrats. They went from like 50 some seats in Parliament, which was like it was a significant force, down to like 12. Like they almost lost all of their seats, which is pretty crazy.
So when I was deployed, the only English news station that was available on the radio, which I think was being piped to us via the base, because it didn't make sense for that area to have an English radio station. But it was all British. It was all British news. And God, it was horrible. Like every other story was a scaremongering story about if Brexit happens, the world will implode upon itself. The economy will everyone will starve. The fridges will be bare. The stores will not have anything to sell. And I'm a foreigner, right? I'm not from your country, but I know just because 25% of your food comes from the EU doesn't mean that you're going to starve, because as soon as those treaties end, you'll make new treaties, and 25% of your food isn't 100% of your food.
Well, and not to mention, I mean, yeah, they're importing 25% of their food, but they're probably also exporting a significant amount of what they are producing food-wise. So, I mean, that's what countries do, is different countries are good at making different things, and they trade them. That's what trade is. So, I mean, that doesn't mean that you're going to starve. It's such a childish reading of how trade works, and that's all that the left is capable of doing, is a childish understanding of these things. But
but it's crazy crazy clear that their news is completely owned by the establishment that's trying in a campaign to convince everybody that Brexit would be the end of times. And the people in Europe, in England, have to have been getting pelted with this constantly. It drove me mad just being there for how many months I was there. Can you imagine living there and constantly being lied to these obvious lies? Like, if your assumption is, if you think that we'd lose 25% of food that is trade with Europe, the assumption is that if Brexit happened, that your leaders would be so stupid and inept they wouldn't make new deals and they'd let you starve.
Well, Remainers would have been.
Right.
So I do like a story that we covered a few weeks ago when after their recent election that they got this landslide in. I remember we were discussing one of the foodstuffs they were going to have problems importing was France threatened that they weren't going to be importing fancy cheeses and wines anymore. Like, oh no.
Yeah, well, America makes better wine. You can just buy it from us. It's the same grapes. Little known fact is Spain used to have the best grapes, and then California had saplings from Spanish grapes. So the grapes in California are actually Spanish in origin. They're immigrant grapes.
legal, I think. But then Spain, not too long after that, they had a blight that killed all of their grapes. And then they had to re-import them from California to get them back. So actually, the original best grape is from California now, and Spanish grapes and most European grapes are actually from American strains of grape, which is funny.
Yeah, and Trump would give them any fair deal with any food that they want, no problem. So there's really it was fear mongering or nothing, right? And then they were like coming with fear mongering, like, oh, if Brexit goes through, then people are going to be trapped here or can't return, right? Like if you have family that are over in Europe, they can't come back to England, or vice versa. If you have people that are from Europe or in England, they couldn't return. Like only if you make that policy.
I saw some stuff about that. There was after the election, there was somebody was doing an op-ed that was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Like I feel like I only have like a month left, and I'm gonna be trapped either in the country or I'm gonna be trapped in Europe somewhere, and I won't be able to get back home. And it was like, that's not how.
It works.
They were like leaving the EU was like equivalent to just the entire island of England just like leaving the planet, and like you would just be stuck in this bubble of space-time forever, not able to go back and forth to Europe or the rest of the planet ever again. Like it was just going to commit.
Right. It was the worst possible interpretation of everything, assuming complete ineptitude and no action by the government. And that was going to all happen at once. It wouldn't be time for you to create policy before it went into effect. All these is complete lies. So, next one.
All right. So, up next, number 11. The economy is bad. It's actually very good. If it is a lot better if you have investments, as the stock market has skyrocketed in the last... Yes, stonks. It's skyrocketed the last 3 years, and I know a lot of Americans, your primary investment portfolio is probably your 401k. There's not a lot of people that were able to take direct advantage of that stock market going up. But beyond the stock market, unemployment hit record lows in nearly a century. The wages of your lowest paying jobs, wages are naturally on the rise as a result of a scarce labor market, which, again, as opposed to a scarce labor market stifling business opportunities, as is proof by the fact that the stock market is still skyrocketing, businesses are not having any issues with the scarcity in the labor market. However, people who are in the labor market, laborers, they are having to get paid more because there's so few of them. And then if companies want these laborers to work for them, they need to attract them because there's not just a pool of open labor, and that's due to a lot of factors. This shrinking of the labor market, increasing in wages, increasing the stock market. There's a lot of factors involved with that, but I think personally the main ones is Trump's mass removal of regulations and his skillful negotiations of foreign trade, as well as a strong stance on immigration. Those are likely the top reasons why the economy is doing so well. Obviously, there's a lot of factors that go into that, but just holistically, it's easy to point to a multitude of Trump-related factors as to why the economy is doing well. Most of the beginning of this year was marked by stories that a recession was coming, with news anchors and journalists openly wishing for a recession in the hopes that it would cause Trump to lose his base. A survey by Reuters over the summer showed that regular MSNBC viewers think that the economy is doing terribly, while the rest of America is viewing it more favorably, and that favorability view is directly related to how much conservative content you're viewing, or more neutral sources. If you're consuming a lot of left-wing content and strong left-wing content, your views are there's a correlation between your view of the economy being bad if you're viewing left-wing content, which is, again, it's just not true. By everything that we can measure, the economy is doing very, very well.
I mean, when you have doomsayers you're listening to all day that are filling your heads with lies, it makes sense that you'd believe those lies over time if those are the people you trust. And these are the same people that have been just hoping and praying for a recession because they just want to hurt Trump and they don't mind sacrificing lives of Americans to do so. But that's to be expected. Sorry, I was laughing at the chat.
I'm also laughing at the chat.
Okay, so
was he a broken computer? Never mind. Move on.
Yeah, if I were to pee on him, it'd probably fix him.
Move on.
So, number 10, anti-Semitism is only on the right. In December of 2019, the Washington Post accused Trump of making anti-Semitic attacks against American Jews. Trump, the first president to make good on America's promise for over 30 years to move the U.S. Embassy in Israel to Jerusalem. Trump, whose daughter and son-in-law are Jewish. And Trump, who's formally expanded the protections of hate crime laws. Oh, shoot, I'm sorry.
That's a unique spelling of Jerusalem.
Whatever. Formally expanded the protection of hate crime laws to protect Jewish nationality and ethnicity, not just the belief system. Apparently, that Trump is anti-Semitic. You may not agree with the existence or expansion of hate crime laws, because I don't. But you definitely can't say that Trump is anti-Semitic because he's giving Jews the equal protections under those laws as other groups have. Vox claimed that Trump's protection of Jews was actually anti-Jewish because it would make pro-Palestinian speech treated as hate speech. What exactly pro-Palestinian speech would that be, though? Trump's order expressly states that this change in definition of hate crimes cannot be used to limit free speech, meaning you can't use this definition to say you can't criticize Israel or you can't criticize Jews. You can still criticize any group you want. You can criticize black people, you can criticize Jews, you can criticize white people. It is a hate crime law requires the actual committing of a crime, and then they just treat that crime as being worse because you also did it because you hated them, that group. Now, I honestly don't think that you need to have the two standards. I think if you commit a crime, there should be a punishment, no matter if you hate the person or not. So I think those laws are ridiculous. I think it's ridiculous.
Certainly not. Yeah? People are certainly not committing crimes out of love, right?
Right. So the only thing this law would have done would make someone who was committing a crime against Jews because they hate Jews, it'd be that much more worse. Well, these are while they're making these ridiculous claims about Trump being anti-Semitic, they're ignoring the very real problem of anti-Semitism going on around America. There really is a problem of anti-Semitism in America. It's not coming from Trump. There has been an anti-Semitic attack for each day of last year. The majority of these attacks are by liberal groups in the New York area and surrounding areas. A lot of them are coming from the black community, and one such group is the Black Israelites. Anti-Semitism is an American problem right now. It is not the biggest problem. It is not the source of most of violence, but it is still a problem. But it's not a right or left problem. It is a collectivist problem. Is hate and bigotry. So hate and bigotry does not come from one skin color or one political group. It's a problem that affects all of them.
Yep. Is that the end? Yep. Alrighty. Up next, we have number 9. Mass shooters are Trump supporters. Never ones to let the blood of Americans go to waste, the mainstream media was particularly fervent this year about painting all mass shooters as Trump-supporting white nationalists. On one particularly solemn weekend this year, we unfortunately had 2 mass shootings happen within 12 hours of each other. El Paso, Texas, and Dayton, Ohio. both events were quickly linked to Trump by the mainstream media. When it turned out that the Dayton shooter was an Elizabeth Warren supporter, the two events became collectively labeled as the El Paso shooting, with some outlets even attributing the casualty count from Dayton to the El Paso event. During a Democrat debate, CNN asked the candidates, one of them being Elizabeth Warren herself, about the Trump-supporting El Paso shooter and failed to mention the Dayton shooting event, which is, you don't need to attribute them to any particular political motivation, but if you're going to be talking about them, why does Dayton just get completely ignored? I don't understand. As many people
doesn't fit the narrative.
It doesn't fit the narrative, and that's a fake news. When it came out that the El Paso shooter was actually an environmental communist, the media ignored his manifesto that said these things, and still to this day, they report it as a Trump-linked shooting. And you'll be hard-pressed to see any mention of the Dayton shooting in the mainstream media from any date beyond 3 days after it happened. It has all been labeled the El Paso shooting, and then they link the El Paso shooter to Trump. Both are false. Both are completely false. And disgusting.
Yep. Yes. Is that the end of the one?
That is the end of that one.
Cool. So number 8, we're getting there.
Oh boy.
The darkest year for press freedom.
I can't see.
Was 2019, apparently.
Hold on a second. Before you start, they must be talking about like YouTube commentary. That's
right.
Yeah, that must be what they're talking about. The darkest year for press freedoms, right? Is that it, or am I missing this?
Well, looking at our YouTube channel right now, because we have basically no one watching. When last show we had more people watching on YouTube than we currently have watching here on D Live. I'm guessing that they've currently suppressed the live stream. Maybe. I would say we've had a pretty dark year for commentary channels on YouTube for sure. But that's not what they're talking about, actually. The New York Times made the dubious and fallacious claim that 2019 under Trump was the darkest year for American journalism. They didn't say this because left-wing activists have regularly attacked journalists. They didn't say this because AOC and other Democrat politicians had shut out the media from their events to prevent being held accountable for the things they say.
I wonder if it was, was it darkest because the media just cannot afford to keep the lights on anymore because they're failing so poorly. Maybe it could have been though. Maybe it could have been darkest because there was journalists being jailed or censored or having the Obama administration target them with all of the intelligence agencies and spying on them and their family. Is that the type of darkness that they were talking about?
Nope. Not a single journalist has been arrested or has been censored by the government this year or any year during Trump's administration. However, during the Obama administration, government officials were denied from going on Fox News for interviews. They had the FBI spy on the New York Times journalist James Risen because of his negative news coverage and the president. The Justice Department under Obama had secretly collected 2 months worth of personal and work-related phone calls from AP reporters and editors. Sorry. No, the Times' reason for calling this the darkest year in journalism was because Trump called them fake news after they published fake news, misleading headlines, and hit pieces on Trump for 3 years. Despite all of Trump's warranted harsh words for the media, they were just words. Obama may have been less vocal of his criticism of the conservative media, though he did call them illegitimate media many times. Obama took a giant leap further and actually used governmental power to take action against the free press.
How dare he?
Yes. So I would say no. 2019 was far from the darkest day for journalism in America.
Yeah, but their feelings were hurt.
Yeah, you know what? Stop publishing fake news, and people will stop saying you're publishing fake news. You know what? When someone says something wrong and you call them out for it in the media, I mean, that's the same thing they're doing to you. Do you think you are beyond criticism when you check other people? Why can't you be fact checked? Are you so holy that you cannot be called out for being wrong?
Yeah, I think it's funny too because I referenced us kind of apart from mainstream journalism by saying we're commentators. We've done one or two little kind of investigations on our own, but most part we're commentary. But I don't necessarily think it's appropriate for me to have distinguished us from the mainstream media because they're 90% commentary now anyways. I mean, they have almost zero original reporting. Their original reporting, to the extent that they have it, is just getting whistleblowers and leakers from that hate Trump from his administration that are Obama holdovers. They're just flooding them with fake information, and that's what they're calling an investigation. So when they're not doing commentary, their investigation is into fake, unsubstantiated facts. So I don't think that while I think that we're both not quite what journalism was meant to be, we are commentary, which is slightly different. I don't necessarily think I should have distinguished ourselves from the mainstream media in our quality of content. More factual, though.
Agreed.
All right.
I think we make more of an effort to be accurate and factual than CNN does.
Yes. All righty. Next one.
Absolutely.
All righty. Speaking of how dare you, the media defined what's that word? Deified? The media deified. Oh, I guess I've never really read that word before. All right, it's the first time for everything. Greta is relevant. That was a fake news story. The phenomenon of Greta Thunberg, an autistic Swedish girl who skipped school because of climate change, is not fake news, but her rapid rise to celebrity was a complete fabrication by the media. If it weren't for the media acting as though she were some sort of wise sage, and so much smarter than all the adults who work in climate scientists, then she would still just be an unknown girl who was skipping school. In making Greta Thunberg famous, they also published many articles parroting her misinformation and unscientific opinions of climate change as if they were true. From the mouth of babes. The truth is that the adults in her life that terrified her in her, again, her autism's not a thing to make fun of, but it is a contributing factor as to why she is so ready to be terrified by the catastrophe of world-ending climate change that her parents continuously fed to her over and over and over again, to the point that she could barely sleep, and she even had psychological mutism where she could not talk for several years because of how scared they made her, which is absolutely child abuse. And then the media fed into her delusion of that she gained from her abuse. To her climate activist mother, she was a meal ticket, and to the mainstream media, she was the flavor of the month. And she's going to get dumped
and they all
real
abused
hard.
Her.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. Well, they've already, the searches for her and the her appearances in media have dropped off, altogether. Almost. So she's no longer the flavor of the month. They've used her up, and they're gonna dispose of her now. And they don't care what kind of damage they've done to her life or to her psyche by making her instantly famous at this age and treating her as though she is so important and so smart, when really she's a 13-year-old girl.
I mean, she's 16 recently, but whatever. I think that she turned 16 during her 8-month journey across the Atlantic in a sailboat that cost more carbon to make that sailboat than what I've probably had my entire life.
So number 6, ready for this? The Democrat group created fake news bots. So we have a Democrat group that created fake news bots. A group of tech experts for a Democratic advocacy organization created a network of bots that they use to create and disseminate fake news meant to hurt Republican Roy Moore in a real election. They spread lies about Mr. Moore being directly supported by the Russians. Their fake news ended up being broadcasted on national news networks, reaching millions of people, very likely affecting the election, which was very close. Their reason for doing this was, in their words, to do an experiment about how the Russian bots might have affected the elections in 2016. So,
it was just an
to
experiment,
test it,
bro.
So to experiment how the Russians might have done it, when the Russian bots had a maximum of like 100,000 views, they went on.
The Russians weren't even using bots; they were just buying Facebook ads, which isn't illegal.
Right. So, but Russians bought Facebook ads that were seen by like 100,000 people. So their response to this was to make a network of bots that they created fake news stories. They crafted them themselves. They didn't find them and then tweet them. They made their own fake news stories. They posted them all over in areas where they're actually the constituents of Roy Moore. So going to Roy Moore's actual people in his districts and fed them fake news, and that fake news was picked up by national television and broadcast to millions of people, some of which still believe the lie because it was never retracted. So that's an experiment? No, that's criminal.
I stole an election as an experiment. It wasn't like I actually stole it, but like, you know, it was just an experiment. I didn't mean it. That's what Trump should have said. He'd been like, "Nah, it was just an experiment."
Oh my God! You have a ironclad defense from now on. You can steal any election you want. You can spread all the fake news you want. It's just an experiment, bro.
Yeah, that's for that, man. Just an experiment. Alrighty. Up next, we have number 5, which is hoax hate crimes. This MAGA country was the shout not heard around the world early last year, as though crafted by an algorithm trying to cram as many buzzwords into a single story as possible. The gay, black, orange man bad Hollywood actor Jussie Smollett was attacked by 2 MAGA hat wearing racists who bashed him, probably in a gay way, and put a noose around his neck, probably in a lynchy type of way, and then poured bleach on him, probably in a white nationalist kind of way. The story was like a salvia drip for the mainstream media, as they took an orgasmic glee in reporting how racist, homophobic all the MAGA supporters were. The only problem? It was a completely made-up story. Smollett received absolutely no consequences for his hoax, and the media completely ignored the story after that.
So I'm of the opinion that hate crime hoaxes should be treated extremely harshly, because hate crime hoaxes, sometimes there's no evidence that it's fake, and you can actually have someone who is innocent have their lives destroyed. And it also costs money, and it also can spread discord in society, which can cause other acts of violence, right? These things are very destructive for society, and this person did all this for a little bit of fame, a little bit more money, and I find that despicable. And to prevent people being encouraged to do stupid shit like this in the future, it needs to be treated harshly.
Yeah, two things. The hoax hate crimes, this was just the big one. There was a lot of them this year, as there is a lot every year. And I think a lot of people get the impression that there's more hoax hate crimes than actual hate crimes, and I have not seen a lot of evidence to refute that assumption. It certainly is more visible. You would think that with as big as these hoax hate crimes get, that if there were real hate crimes out there, they would also be getting big press coverage, because that's why this got any press coverage at all, because it fits the narrative that the mainstream media wants to go after. So, I don't see any evidence to refute that there's more hoax hate crimes than actual hate crimes. I think that this is every hoax hate crime is a reason against having hate crime legislation in the first place. They're just crimes. If they're really bad to do it across races, they should be really bad to do it within your race. It's not just more okay because you happen to have the same skin color. It's both not okay. But yeah, that's one of the reasons why I don't think we should have hate crime legislation to begin with. The other thing is Shadow Wolf in chat said, so that thing that never happened, but still is important because it reveals the truth about Trump's America. Yeah, that was more or less a quote that somebody said during this. Was that after it was revealed to be fake, somebody in the media said something to the effect of, "Well, it's still morally correct. It still reveals a truth about what it is to be a MAGA supporter." I was like, it wasn't real. It didn't happen. It was like, if you like say like, oh, like Trump's Russia collusion that was debunked. Like, well, it still reveals a thing about how Trump is colluding with Russia. It wasn't real.
It does the exact opposite. Like, there isn't MAGA supporters going around and attacking people. That's Antifa. They're doing it to the conservatives.
Because again, if there was, they clearly would be getting national coverage for weeks, as this had national coverage for almost a full 4 weeks, almost a whole month, before it got found out to be a hoax. And it was very obvious from the beginning that it was a hoax, but the mainstream media didn't want to do any investigation on that because, God forbid they do journalism.
And the real irony is a fake story like this is, even when proven to be fake, is said to be emblematic of what the right really are. Like, oh, okay, maybe the MAGA guys didn't do it this time, but it sounds like something they would do. So this is really good, like, a symbol of what's wrong with society. But then when Antifa goes around all year bashing people's heads in, and you say, hey, look, the left is violent. It's like, man, they don't represent the left. They don't even represent Antifa. That's just a few bad actors. Like, fuck you.
Absolutely.
No, you are not consistent. Not one bit. Okay, so number 4.
Alrighty. Oh, this is my favorite one.
I didn't read this one yet.
Look at number 4.
Okay hand gesture is racist. Of course it is, because it says okay. It's white power. White power. And obviously AOC. What? And Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden, whoever else is in that picture, Clinton, they're all white power. They're all Nazis, obviously.
Yes.
So, because you see them doing the sign right there. Obviously, okay, symbol is racist. There were really a uncountable number of stories this year on the investigation into the OK hand gesture being a white nationalist gang sign. The latest of which was some West Point students who were playing the circle game, which, by the way, would make the OK sign be upside down, which would mean it would no longer be a W and a P. So that doesn't make any sense.
Would it be like DM? Maybe it's maybe slide into my DMs. Maybe that's what it means. Have we all been missing this? Is that what that means? Is it's slide into my DMs?
Absolutely.
All right, we need to like start this as a theory, Dyer. We'll do that next episode though.
Will do. So the circle game is a widely known game played by boys as an excuse to hit each other, because that's what boys do. GTF over at leftist.
Get the fuck over it, leftist.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Get the fuck over it, leftist. It's also a gesture widely popularized by politicians and anyone wishing to express satisfaction from a distance. This has not stopped the media from widely reporting that incidents of this usage could be linked to white nationalist activity, including during the Kavanaugh hearings. Someone just kind of rested their hand in the OK symbol on their knee, and they said that it's obviously proof that they were
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Oh my God.
I just see it everywhere. It's so ridiculous.
How dumb do you have to be for the people who made this meme? They said from the beginning, we're doing this just to make you look like a fool because we're taking something that people already do, things that you have done, and we're trying to say it has this racist implication, even though no one else has a definition for it, just us saying it does. And we're doing this to make you look like a fool, and all you got to do is take the bait, and we'll make you look stupid. And then you read their intent. You know what they're doing, and then you do it anyways. How stupid do you have to be? If you were clueless about it and you fell into the trap, I mean, you're still kind of dumb. But if you see what they're doing, you do it anyways. Because the fact that 4chan was doing this and that's what their intent was also published in these same articles that are accusing people of actually being racist.
That would require drawing logical conclusions from the existing facts, which is not a thing that journalists do. not in 2019. This little collection of images is just a few. I mean, I could have done this with probably every single named person on the left in the media and in government. Everybody does the okay hand sign because guess what? It has nothing to do with being a white nationalist.
I'm okay with
it. Oh no, Dyer's dog whistling. All right, next story. Oh, actually, I lied. This was my second favorite one. The next one is my favorite one. All right, Trump killed an austere religious scholar.
What a sad day,
it
really.
It was a terrible, terrible sad day.
He was so austere and such a scholar.
Yes. The Washington Post reported that Baghdadi, al-Baghdadi, the guy that Conan the Wonder Dog ate, was an austere religious scholar. This is interesting in that it is technically not fake news because Baghdadi was actually an intense scholar of Islam in its various texts, and it was in reading the Quran and the Hadiths that he found his terroristic beliefs. So while the headline is actually accurate, the sentiment that Washington Post was going for here, that he was some sort of good, calm guy, that was fake. It is also technically fake news that Trump killed him. As we all know, the hero dog Conan is personally responsible for killing the ISIS leader. There is also the fact that Conan is a good boy, a very good boy, a fact that was not reported on heavily enough by anyone.
No, there was a lot of people really looking at his junk to make sure he really was a boy.
Yeah.
There was an abnormal amount of people discussing his junk.
I love and building the slide. I love how many pictures, like every picture of him, his tongue is just like stupidly lolling out of his mouth. And like the one where it's not I think that's Pence's hand just giving him scritches. He loves it. He's such a good boy. He's so happy. All he wants to do is eat terrorists all day long.
Also, that picture there was clearly doctored to show Trump giving Conan the Medal of Honor. This doctored picture actually got what news agency was it that contacted the Daily Wire to ask them about whether or not
it was New York Times. It was either Washington Post or New York Times.
Asking for comment about a doctored picture from the Daily Wire.
To which the owner of the Daily Wire, Jerry Boring, who owns it with Ben Shapiro, he responded to that with, "Are you fucking kidding me?" That was his only response.
Oh, do you have a picture of the other medal that was given out for the most recent killing of Soleimani?
Yeah, I do. I'll look it up real quick.
Let me show that because it turns out that Conan actually has 2 frags to his name. He's got 2 confirmed kills, and I at this rate, he might become the most decorated military dog in U.S. history.
Wait, which do you mean the other one I sent you earlier today? Or
absolutely mean that one. The 2 pictures, because there's one that came after. Well, yes. If you look at the tweet, there's a picture right under it too.
Oh, really? Oh, that was the one that that was what I said that someone should make.
Yes. There's the first one. This is the drone getting the Medal of Honor for killing Soleimani. And then we also have the pilot of that drone.
Yeah, so drone getting the Medal of Honor. And Conan given the order. Shoot to kill.
He's a very sophisticated dog.
He's so smart.
Very good boy.
Yes, only the best and brightest in the U.S. military. Conan truly is the best of us. I love this dog.
Right, I do too. Okay, let's belabor this long enough. Let's go on.
Have we mentioned that Conan's a good dog?
Yes.
Okay. Alrighty. Our next fake news story
Number 2
is
Epstein killed himself.
What?
Is a fake story.
Are you kidding me?
One of the biggest, most outrageous lies of the decade, not just the year. It started with the mainstream media. That was not telling us that the conspiracy was debunked because of a single corner saying that he died by hanging himself with paper sheets. Was it me or was the grammar on that sentence terrible?
That was an awfully grammatic sentence.
Okay, let me just rephrase that. So, One of the biggest outrages was the lie from the mainstream media saying that based on just the testimony from one corner, that Epstein somehow was managed to hang himself with paper-thin sheets of toilet paper. Basically, literally everyone in the world, does not believe that one bit. The story did not make sense. It was suspicious that the cameras just happened to go out at that time. It was suspicious that just a week prior, his roommate had tried killing him, apparently, and that the guards that were sitting right next to his cell were not available or passed out sleeping at the time. So no one believed the story that he killed himself. Also, thanks to Project Veritas, it was revealed that I don't know where I left off here. I'm sorry, because I was freewheeling it. The media couldn't stop the meme because everyone kept commenting how it wasn't a real story. So everyone was memeing it. They switched to suggesting that it was, in fact, Trump who had killed him. What? Had him killed, and that there was no real connection to the Clintons. What? How is there more of a connection to Trump killing?
Well, that was part of the media. The new narrative was, after it was said, okay, well, he didn't, he was killed. He didn't kill himself. He was killed by somebody. The commentators in the media switched from saying, everybody was saying, well, he must have been killed because of his link to the Clintons. And while everybody was talking about the Clintons, the mainstream media tried to switch it over. A lot of the commentators in the mainstream media switched over to saying, well, there's just as much connection to Trump, and it was probably Trump of all people who had him killed.
It was later revealed by Project Veritas that ABC News reporter news about Epstein knew about Epstein's crimes three years ago, citing the Clintons specifically, but instead of reporting on it, decided to aid and abet one of the largest child rape gangs in history by knowingly covering it up.
That's pretty fake news.
That's actually 3 years of fake news,
and possibly a crime.
Possibly a crime.
Someone should look into that.
So, to recap, there is no evidence that he actually killed himself. Lots of evidence showing that likely he didn't kill himself. There was a great Steven Crowder bit where he showed how much weight it would actually take to break that bone in your neck, and even trying his hardest with material that wouldn't rip, he couldn't do it.
Yeah. And just zero curiosity from the entire media about trying to get to the bottom of this. Zero curiosity from everybody outside of ABC being interested in trying to figure out, why did ABC have this covered up? Even to the point of, I think it's CBS, fired somebody at random because they thought they might be related to the leak from ABC's archives of this stuff. So not only was the rest of the media not interested in the story about ABC covering it up to begin with, they were also actively working with ABC to make sure more didn't come out.
So Crowder had to, with his entire body weight plus someone pulling him with a material that wouldn't rip. That's what was required to get to the force required to break the bones in his neck in the same way that this person had his bones broken. Though it could also be achieved by the same amount of force, but in a smaller amount of force, but in a smaller surface area. You could break those same bones, like if you were to choke somebody. When
a suicide comes up behind you and tries to choke you.
Right. This is how you defend yourself.
So we have an honorable mention before we get to number one here, which is a very good story that I should have included on this list. I'm not sure which story I would have kicked off the list, though. That was brought up by Triumvirate in chat, who was talking about the Syrian bombing raid that ABC covered that was not actually a Syrian bombing raid. It was actually just footage from a Kentucky air show demoing some of the military hardware that we have. And I believe it was even a couple years old. And that was a very, very, very fake story, because basically ABC was saying, like, yeah, we're at war now. We're in a hot war. We're doing bombing raids in Syria. It's full-scale war. And it was completely fake. It was totally made up. The footage was in America. Somebody had even cropped, because the original footage had on the bottom of it all the cell phone videos in the crowd. You could see everybody else in the crowd that had their cell phones up taking videos of it. That had been cropped out on ABC's report, which, maybe ABC wasn't the one that cropped it out, but they had also severely downgraded the resolution so that it looked like it was kind of a grainy cell phone video that you might expect somebody in Syria to have. And it was very, very fake news and very dangerous news. So that certainly gets an honorable mention. Thank you for bringing that up, Triumvirate.
I also want to cover some fake news in that it was omitted from the news throughout this last year. Who heard a lot about the ongoing Yellow Jacket protests?
I believe that they're in week 80.
Yeah. The fact is the mainstream media is not talking about them, trying to pretend like they're not happening. But the Yellow Jacket protests are going on. How about the Hong Kong protests, which I spelled horribly? The Hong Kong protest. Very little news coverage of those ongoing protests and how those people are being abused by their government. And also the Iranian protest. I don't know if you know this, but we've mentioned it a few times, but the Iranian people have been protesting and rioting in their streets because of their dissatisfaction with their government and their economy.
The theme in all three is that you have a populace that is looking to have more liberties and a government that is oppressing them. And the leftist mainstream media just loves those oppressive regimes because they would love to have one here, and they have no interest in covering protesters that want more liberties and freedoms.
Yes. So in Iran, they, in their their hack, they said that they are helping all these oppressed peoples. I already went over it with you how all those oppressed peoples they're helping are actually the oppressors that are trying to oppress those people, and they're supporting those groups there. You have the Palestinians trying to oppress the people in Israel. You have the Houthis are trying to overthrow the Yemenis government and oppress the people there. The same thing, Lebanon, all those places they're supporting, all the proxy wars, they're actually supporting the oppressors. And then at home, they are oppressing their own people, and their own people are rioting because they want freedom. But their people are being forced by their religious government. The women have to wear their hijabs, and one way they're protesting is take their hijabs off, and they're going to jail and sometimes being executed for not following Sharia law. You're not free in Iran to not be Muslim. I know you don't realize that, but you have to follow all their religious tenets. Otherwise, it is a crime punishable by death. That's what the oppressive regime they're living under.
Sounds like something that we should support and not talk about. Good job,
and
mainstream media.
If we weren't already off of YouTube,
well, I think that's actually a YouTube accepted position. But moving on to our final story, our number one top fake news story of 2019. I've seen a lot of you guys talking about it in chat. You guys were looking for it, trying to figure out where it was. It's coming up right now. Some of you guys figured it out. And the top fake news story of 2019 absolutely had to be the Covington Catholic boys are racist. At number one by far was the Covington Catholic smear job. Every single mainstream outlet and nearly every commentator got this one wrong, and they even doubled down on it after they were proven wrong. This is a story that we have done so many times on this channel that we won't be going through the whole thing again, even though we wanted to. But this ranks number one because of how viciously the media went after these kids, spouting the fake story. And they did this for the sole reason that they were Trump supporters. The media smears were so vicious and unfounded that many outlets are now being sued successfully by the Covington kids, including the Washington Post, CNN, and NBC. The news report was so fake that the Washington Post's main defense against the lawsuit was in saying that they, the Washington Post, were not in fact a real news agency. A judge that was friendly to the Washington Post initially tried to have their case dropped by saying that what the Post reports is just, quote, a matter of opinion and subjective because their frequent use of loose figurative language and rhetorical hyperbole.
So basically, Washington Post is not actually news.
Yeah.
And that's legally, that was determined in a court of law.
Yes, it is a legal decision that they are fake news.
NewsGuard needs to remove that check mark.
that is pretty wild that you can have a news agency be declared fake news legally, and NewsGuard says they are real news.
Yeah, right. I wish I could say that I take pride in that. Direwolf Media's initial response to watching that video was, that proves nothing. I want to see more of what happened, because that literally the first clip was a kid smiling and a guy banging a drum. What are you? Everything you're saying is wrong is not actually in this video. I wish I could be proud that we had that reaction, but that's how everyone should have reacted. You shouldn't be proud of reacting that way. What you should be is if you reacted like what's that YouTube commentator's name, DeFranco.
Yeah.
If you responded like DeFranco, you should be ashamed of yourself, and you should have had a full-throated apology to those people, because he aided and abetted in the harassment and the tearing down of these kids' names.
Yeah, DeFranco, who I had been following at the time, I've since follow almost not at all now. He didn't do videos on the weekends, and so he actually did a special. He came out of his weekend to do a special stream talking about this. He has almost no other stories that he's taken a special weekend to do a custom stream for it. This was like one of the only times he's ever done that. And he jumped in to just dogpile on these kids without having any of the facts. And it was just wild that he would take that special time out of his day that he wasn't normally working to jump in on a fake news story and propagate it. And then when the next week when it was realized, oh crap, I screwed up, he had the tiniest micro apology ever about it, which I think if I remember correctly, he didn't even actually say that he was sorry. He just said, oh yeah, like there was a lot of like misinformation out there, like how was anyone to know? It's like, well, you have a multi-million-dollar media organization, Philip DeFranco, as all of these other people do. You could have looked. And the reason why we know it was fake was because within like an hour of the report coming out, we had Reddit finding the full video, the full 2-hour context of the 20-second clip that Washington Post and CNN and all the other ones ran with. They ran with this 20-second clip out of context, when it was very obvious to everyone else on the internet, the full 2-hour video was out on the internet. And it was very obvious from that video that it was not even close to what the mainstream media had reported it to be.
Yeah. Now, there is a lesson we learned from here. For anyone who did make this mistake and misjudge and just go along with the fake news, I do believe in forgiveness, right? But for you to forgiveness does still require that someone apologize and try to do better. So if you ever see a clip in the future, because this is what what you call social media is degraded to, is you have people on both sides making clips out of context. Next time you see a clip that's critical of the left and it's just a short 1 to 6 seconds out of context, and they're saying this person was doing this, don't do what they did to the Covington kids. Actually wait for real evidence if something has happened. Don't just believe the video clips. Even if you do make a mistake, apologize and do better next time. Don't do what DeFranco did and just try to gloss over it.
Yep.
Because that's the moment I stopped watching him, by the way. I gave him about a month of every single video I saw of his, I commented, when are you going to apologize to the governing kids? And when he didn't do it, I'm like, okay. I mean, I gave him lots of opportunities to, regain his credibility, but he didn't.
Yeah. So that was by far our top one. Alrighty. So that was 2019, everyone.
That was a doozy.
That went longer than I thought it would. But not as long as it could have been.
Well, I can go longer if you like.
Oh god. Why don't we stay on YouTube for the last little bit here? Since we've already been on YouTube for 2 hours, might as well keep it going. we'll give you guys this first one where we'll stay on YouTube for a little while.
All right, but if you're on YouTube, please, anyways, just go to that link in the description and follow us on DLive, because that's where the party's at, and that's where when YouTube finally gets rid of us, because they're on to us. They've already, suppressed our video, our live stream on YouTube, so they're coming for us.
All right, so we just went over what happened in 2019 and kind of a review of all the best fake news stories that we went over. Now, Dyer and I are going to make some predictions for the coming year, for 2020. What will happen in 2020 is anyone's guess, but you didn't tune in to hear just anyone's guess. You turned in to hear Dyer's guess. And maybe mine. I have to believe that there's at least someone out there that values my opinion, because it certainly isn't Dyer. So,
at least you know your place.
At least I do. All right, so our first prediction is going to be who will get the Democrat nomination. And I gave us the option to pick 2 people. So Dyer, who's your picks for getting the Democrat nomination in 2020?
So number one, so first off, I believe the establishment is the ones that are going to try to engineer the candidate that's picked. And anyone who's not an establishment-supported candidate doesn't have a hope. It was proven in the last election with Bernie Sanders. If you don't have the support of the establishment, it doesn't matter how many votes and how much support you have. So I think the one that they're angling for the most is Biden. Clearly establishment's favorite, and it's also very important for their Trump impeachment strategy. See, if he's not a candidate, then their attack against Trump, going after a political rival, falls apart because he's not actually still the rival, right? So I think that it helps their strategy. And then any further investigation into the cause of the Ukraine investigation and the phone call, any further investigation into Biden's will be seen as being partisan, right? So him being the candidate is the most politically advantageous for them. The backup for if Biden completely crash and burns is Warren. Warren is clearly the most supported establishment candidate after Biden.
Alrighty, so I think that it will be either Warren or Bloomberg. I think that Biden and Sanders are not going to survive the primaries, possibly literally. Their energy is so low already. I think that they haven't been tested as hard. The year before election year is not necessarily a very rough schedule for candidates. You're not doing as many, or you don't necessarily have to do as many events where you're out there in front of the people. I don't think that Biden is going, or Sanders is going to be able to keep up any kind of schedule that even comes close to what Trump's schedule is for rallies and getting out in front of the people.
Hillary couldn't either.
Yeah, Hillary could not either. And I think that I don't think that's going to fly well with the younger Democratic Party. I don't think that they're going to find that to be very interesting. So I think that they're going to end up getting stuck with, although I do agree with you that they're going to want some kind of establishment candidate. So I think that Warren is who they're going to be stuck with. Not necessarily who their choice is going to be, but I think that's who they're going to end up being stuck with. And then one of the reasons why I put in Bloomberg for second is I think that it will be possibly Bloomberg or one of these other like billionaire late entrants, just from the ability to purchase so much influence. I think that's going to go a long way. The spending power of the Democrats is nearly zero right now. They're just not pulling in that much dough. And if you have somebody who can self-fund that much content and commercials, do those really big media blasts without requiring any of the money from the DNC or any of the money from their supporters, that's going to go a long way to getting your numbers up before the primaries.
Their problem is that the person pulling in the most money for the Democrats right now, that's new money, not like Bloomberg's obviously outspending everybody, but the person bringing in the most money right now is someone they don't want to win. which is Sanders.
Yep. We'll have to figure that out.
Thank you very much for the follow, Kayla. I thought you were already following me. What's going on?
He just wants attention. Maybe he followed with another account, which we condone. Alrighty. So, anything else on that one?
No.
It's pretty cut and dry. Alrighty. So, we'll review these in 2021, and you guys can make fun of us for being idiots. So here, all right. So, next question is, who will be their VP picks? And it doesn't really matter who wins. They're gonna have to. Somebody's gonna have to pick a VP. Maybe, I don't know, maybe 2020 will be crazy. We just don't have VPs anymore. So, Dyer, who do you think will be a VP pick for whoever gets the Democrat nomination?
Thank you for that also follow from Red Wings.
Let's go Red Wings. Woo!
So, VP picks. So, along the same logic as before, Warren might pick Biden. Again, I think Biden's their first pick, but he might fall apart. So if he's not, then Warren's the main pick. So if Warren gets in, she might pick Biden to maintain the impeachment strategy, right? Biden, if he survives, would likely pick Warren for the female vote. Alternatively, either one of them could pick Kamala Harris, who would be younger and is still establishment friendly. All the establishment, all the non-establishment actors, the ones that are the radicals on the Democrat parties like AOC, or the independents like Tulsi Gabbard, are not going to get picked as VPs because they can't be controlled by the establishment and they're a risk to the establishment. So they're probably going to pick someone who they already have a good control over.
All right. I think that the VP will be someone who's not currently running. There's been very minimal excitement about all the current DNC candidates. That's why they've been kind of round-robining, going around who they think is their favorite, and they keep getting stuck on Biden just because he's got name recognition. And I don't think that I think that the Democrats realize that their boring selves as a candidate plus another one of their boring selves as a VP candidate is going to equal one really boring ticket. So I think that the VP will be something not currently running, and I'm not familiar enough with broader Democrat up-and-comers or establishment Democrats by name to really give any definitive answer as to who, but I do think it will be somebody who we don't recognize from the stage.
Sounds good.
Alrighty, so up next, the election results. We are going to give estimates of the electoral counts for the presidency, and who do we think is going to get the House and the Senate? Dyer, you are up first.
So I think Trump is going to win with roughly the amount of the electoral votes he's got last time. I don't think he's going to get a whole lot more. I don't think it's going to be that big of a landslide. I think it's going to be just close to what he had before. Unless something radical happens, of course. If Trump's election is to lose, it's Trump's election to lose right now. The Democrats don't have a clear platform. Trump has a platform. He has a record of promises he's kept, a booming economy, and the Democrats have no platform other than Orange Man bad. So Trump would have to do something bad and mess up for him to lose. The Senate will stay with the GOP, and the House will probably stay with the Dems, but they will probably lose some seats. I'm guessing that because the Dems currently in the House have 235 out of 435 seats. I'm predicting they're going to drop down to about 220 seats or less.
Yeah. All right. So I think that the Republicans sweep it all. I think that they're going to retain a slim majority in the Senate, maybe even be a little bit slimmer. I think that they'll probably pick up a very, very slim majority in the House, like maybe 1 or 2 seats, and I think that's really generous of me to say that. And I think that Trump will win with 70-plus electoral votes. I think he'll have a pretty large electoral landslide. Alrighty. Next is, what excuse will the media give when Trump wins? Dyer, you're up.
Of course he cheated. The Russian narrative isn't going to go anywhere. They will just blame. They may also blame fake news, which will be accidentally correct.
The irony.
I know. He probably will win because of fake news, but not fake news on the right. Because of fake news on the left, everyone's having a backlash to.
Thank you for the follow, Classy Cynic. Let's see here. I also agree that it will be Russian collusion again, and I really do. Even though it'd be really dumb of them to do it, I think that they'll do it. I think that they will say that they were that the election was hacked again, even though we already know that didn't happen last time. Everything will just be 2.0. And I also think that they will say something along the lines of it should have been illegal for him to run since he was technically partially somewhat impeached by the House. I think that they will try to make that argument that even if there isn't a law, there should be a law, and that he shouldn't have been able to run in the first place, and so his win will be illegitimate because of that.
Fair enough.
Alrighty. Next up.
Where are we at?
Will Trump be impeached by the Senate?
No, the impeachment trial will be pretty quick, less than a week once it's actually finally started. The Senate will very likely hold more hearings about the origins of the impeachment and Biden after the trial, not during.
So I pretty much agree with that, I think. I think he will not be impeached by the Senate, and I think that the trial will be rather quick and not that interesting. I am hopeful, but I don't think that he will. I don't think that McConnell will have his house of horrors with all of the witnesses that we'd all love to see testify, like the Bidens, like Schiff, like the whistleblower. I don't think we're going to see any of them testify in an impeachment trial, and that is deeply disappointing to me. But regardless, he will not be impeached.
Yes, sadly. Sadly, there won't be the full horror show of all the evidence coming out for the Bidens, but oh well.
Alrighty.
Next thing is going to be what, this one here?
Yep.
Oh,
Nope.
Okay. Will Nancy try to impeach in the House again? Yes. They will continue to look for evidence or try to create more evidence, because really the Ukrainian phone call was manufactured evidence. There is, just like the dossier, I'm seeing a strategy here. So there is no shortage of Democrat loyalists in the government that would love to lie to hurt Trump. So I foresee lots more bombs being dropped.
Yes. Bombshell. Yes, I also agree, but only a little bit. I think it's about maybe 51% chance that she tries again. It's obviously a really dumb idea. It was a terrible idea before, but she is up against a wall and she is desperate. And I don't underestimate a rabid Nancy who's been cornered. she'll bite you. So Again, why I think it's a terrible idea, and that's why I think that she won't do it. I do. Nancy's got to be smart, right? I mean, you don't stay in power as long as she has and make as much money off of the government as she has, mostly through corruption, without being pretty smart. So I don't. Nancy makes dumb decisions, and I don't really agree with her politics, but she's a smart lady. She's got stuff figured out. So, but a lot of her, what's that?
She's cutthroat too.
Yeah, she has cutthroat. But a lot of her decisions this year have really been desperation decisions, have been things that were out of her control and her desperately trying to hang on to the wheel. And so I think that is the reason why she would do it again. Not because she thinks it's a good idea, but because she thinks that she doesn't have any other choice. Yeah.
So the next question is level of political violence in this year. So For more than years,
you wrote this. I didn't write this.
Sorry, far more. I expect far more violence this year than the previous year, and even more violence if Trump wins. Civil war. I don't think that civil war is going to happen in the sense of like armed conflict between to take control of governmental power, like anything like that happening. I don't see any civil war like that. I do expect civil conflict. Primarily between the like Antifa, radical political groups in the streets. I think there's going to be more violence from that because there's been no crackdown. There's been encouraging of that violence. So I think the left's going to keep doing this, and I think that the right that has been conditioned now to expect to be attacked at events, they're going to start bringing their own weapons and stuff and be doing tit for tat. So I expect to see more violence on both sides, and I think it's only going to escalate. And if Trump wins, it's going to be a lot worse.
Yeah, I think you have to put DC on lockdown for a few days if Trump wins. I definitely think that the violence is going to increase. I think that we'll be seeing more violent showing from the right this year, mostly from the alt-right. I think that they've been rather quiet since Charlottesville. I think that was really the last time that they've had a actual violent showing, or that anybody from the right has. I think that you're going to see some more from the right this year, and I just think that's unavoidable with how much the left has been allowed to get away with, and I don't like it. It's not condoning it. It's just a prediction I have that we're going to see more violence from both sides being initiated from both sides, and I mean violence in the sense of like Antifa style violence. I don't necessarily mean like going out with like mass shootings like lone wolves type stuff. I mean that's gonna happen probably one way or the other. What's that?
That's probably going to still happen too, but I think that the alt-right, they're not going to act on their own. They're not going to probably do their own rallies and then try to fight Antifa on their own because they're a much smaller group of people. What they're most likely going to do is try to continue what they've been doing, but more so is to co-op or join in other right-wing groups and then be a part of do violence at those events, right?
Yeah.
And along with other conservatives, I'm saying like these conservatives are going to be defending themselves as well because they or lashing out in response to having been attacked so many times in the past. And I think that the alt-right and and far right would be joining in on that.
Yeah, I think it'll be less obvious who started the violence when these things happen.
Right. It's not going to be any one person starting it. Probably is going both ways. Because I mean, initially, I would say that the Antifa on the far left have been the aggressors for a long time.
Yes, and
which is going to make people feel justified in being the aggressor now.
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly my point. I think it's been rather obvious the last 3, 4, 5 years. That the left and that Antifa, when we have these political events where there's violence, it's been the left that has started it, and I think that it might be less obvious this summer, which is unfortunate. And then I also think that we may start seeing more to the extent that we see them at all attacks from either side against their leaders. That might be politicians or thought leaders. I think that we might see more of going to people's houses and intimidating them, and possibly some kind of violence or assassination attempts acted out against these thought leaders on the opposite side. And that could happen from either side. I just think that'll be part of the escalation. It's a concern prediction that I have for 2020.
So what's going to go
hot year?
Yeah, definitely. What's going to go on in Virginia? So if their gun legislation passes, I believe the Supreme Court will act rather quickly to overturn the unconstitutional laws. The local government may try to jail the local police and sheriffs who are not enforcing the gun restrictions. If they do that, and if they try to impose those restrictions in districts that they've just unseated or superseded the police and sheriffs of, there will most likely be violence, and it will be completely on their hands.
Yep. If the Democrats actually go through with passing it, which there's really no reason why they wouldn't. It's not like they're going to go with the will of the people. And it's two-part. If they actually pass it and they actually enforce the gun laws that they're talking about, I think that people will end up dying in the attempt to enforce it. I think that the only way to avoid that happening is to either have them not being passed or not being enforced. But I think any attempt to enforce the type of things that they're talking about will result in somebody dying, and it'll be a direct result of those laws.
Yeah, I would see militia groups from other states in being willing to engage in opposing that.
Yay. All right. Will Brexit actually happen?
If they don't, there will be civil war. I would say a 50-50 chance.
I think yes. I think Boris has too much riding on this. Some of the local politics in The UK is, from my understanding, is that the Conservatives took their massive landslide victory in the election recently. Part of that was from making a deal with other parties that weren't normally going to vote for the Conservatives, saying, we are going to do this for you. We are going to be doing Brexit. Lend us our vote. That was one of the things that was part of Boris's campaign was, don't give me your vote, lend me your vote. He understands that he's not doing it for the Conservatives. He's doing it for the British people. And I think after you have that type of campaign message and then that big of a response in the voting that accepts that campaign message, I don't think that there's any way for him to get away with not doing it. It just has to happen.
So I'm just cynical. I think he 100%, 1,000% intends on doing it. I just know that there is so many powerful people, not just in that country, but around the world that are heavily invested in this not happening, that I would not be surprised by some pretty shady and even violent things happening to prevent this from happening. They don't give up power very easily.
I'll say to Triumvirate in chat that have you ever been hit by a potato gun? It's nothing to snark at. I think a civil war with Ireland would be pretty devastating.
Definitely to the potato crop.
Yes. Alrighty. Let's see here. Next one is: will the economy continue continue its strength to 2021, or will it stagnate at some point or contract at some point in 2020?
So I think there's going to be some ups and downs with the market continuing on a general upward trajectory until midway through Trump's presidency. I predict Iran will instigate further conflict. And I think that conflict is going to cause big ripples in our economy. So I think that there will be a downturn halfway through his presidency. Whoever is the president is going to have the same problem.
Yeah. I definitely think the economy is going to cool off before the election. It has been going way too strong for far too long. I think it's the longest bull run we've had in like 100 years. It's really, it's doing really well, but it certainly looks like a bubble, in my opinion, and the probability that it switches directions and start heading down, that increases more and more every day that it goes up. And I think that it's really improbable that it will continue for another 10 more months, which will take us up to Election Day. But we're also in unprecedented times, especially economically, so who knows? Maybe Trump can keep it going. If anyone could keep it going, Trump could keep it going. He's just that crazy.
All right, next one. Will Direwolf Media still be on YouTube?
No,
obviously.
Case closed.
But we'll still be making content elsewhere.
Yeah, so follow us on DLive. Follow us. We're also on Twitch. We're on Mixer. We're on BitChute. We are on Periscope on Twitter. We're all over the place. We are Dyer could be in your ceiling tiles. Who knows? We're all over the place. Let's see here. So last one, a little bit of a fun one. Dyer, you think we're gonna get disclosure this year? Do you think they're gonna tell us about the aliens finally?
No, I think that if the aliens existed, they either existed outside of our frame of reference time-wise, or they're too far away on another planet for us to ever reach.
Or they're a recently elected congressman from New York.
I mean, the only alien we're gonna ever know is freaking what was his face? Facebook's owner, CEO.
Oh yeah, Zuckerberg. Yeah,
Zuckerberg. Yeah, Zuckerberg's the only alien we're ever gonna know in our lifetime.
Yeah, I think the aliens probably heard about the Trump policy, so they're not coming.
Yeah, they
stay
heard
in
about
space
the
policy.
Stay in Mexico, so aliens are gonna go to Mexico first.
They're not sending their best. Alrighty.
It took us 100 years to get here. I'm sorry.
Alrighty. Well, that was so we. Thank you for joining us on our journey through the last year and our predictions for the next year. We got a little bit more of the stuff here, but I just wanted to say thank you to you guys for that. We anticipate having a very fun year with you guys. This is an election year, which is a lot of fun for us. It'll be a lot of fun for you guys, and hopefully a lot of fun for the rest of America, and not a lead up to a civil war.
Yeah. Staying positive.
Stay positive. Alrighty. So our next story, which I think is our this will be our last section. And we are going to be talking about our weekly defensive use of a firearm update, which was something that a new segment that we're going to be doing all year long, and something that we're excited to be doing. So on Saturday at 1:15 a.m., a man with a firearm, probably a bad man, was breaking into a home in Detroit. Well, that's surprising. While the would-be home invader was attempting to break down the back door of the 58-year-old male resident, shot and injured him. The police later arrested the criminal at the hospital.
Yes. So he didn't die, winning the guy. On Friday, this is a separate one, in Indianapolis, Indiana, at a 9:30 p.m., a man tried to rob a victim in his car. Instead of getting a wallet, he was given a free bullet. On Friday, there was
probably
a total...
without the casing.
Yes, without the casing. So those are two instances from today and yesterday. And just from yesterday, there was 72 defensive uses of a firearm reported so far.
Awesome. That's really great. And of course, we've also had the case from last week, which was a big story, when a man attempted to shoot up a church in Texas. In that story, a deacon from that church and 5 other members of the church all responded with concealed weapons. In that case, one good guy with a gun stopped the shooting within 6 seconds via a headshot. Boom! Considering the great outcome in this story, you might expect that pastors all over the country would support having volunteer security personnel at their churches, but you would be mistaken. Jeremy Zippel, associate pastor at a Catholic church in Belize City and former executive director of American Magazine, said he would rather let people die than have guns in his church. Wait, let me read that again. A pastor said he would rather let people die than have guns in his church. Specifically, he said that his approach was for his church to, quote, be bold and say no more killing and then just trust in God. Yeah, that's right, people. You just let Jesus take the wheel while people are shooting at you.
Yeah, just tell that shooter, don't kill people. Shame on you.
Yeah. I think I think when your death is imminent and you don't take action to stop it, I believe that qualifies as suicide, in my opinion. I don't know. Maybe that's between you and God when you get up there, but I think that is not looked upon fondly in most religions.
So,
most of the good ones.
I mean, I've cracked the Bible once or twice, and I believe that
did you glue it back
nowhere
together?
Nowhere in the Bible does it say that you're required to that doesn't require believers to die as martyrs. Other religions do want you to do that, but I remember correctly. I mean, the God of the Bible actually, told people to defend their families and their lives and their countries.
I mean, a lot of the main stories, that has to do with holding out against superior forces. And it's a lot of, some of the stories involve God stepping in a little bit, but a lot of them involve, men of action taking action and, doing it for themselves.
Yes, so his apostles carried swords. He gave instructions based off of frames of reference they'd understand. So when he was talking about defending against the devil, he talked about having armor and weapons because that's something they'd have reference to. It was common for men in those days to be the defenders of their cities, defenders of their families, and to have both weapons and armor. They did not expect people to just be pacifist and lay down their lives for their religion.
Yeah, you're supposed to be God's flock of lambs, not just lambs to the slaughter for anybody who happens to walk into your church.
So, not advocating this religion. I'm just saying that this guy's beliefs don't seem very consistent with the religion he's supposed to be teaching as a pastor, and as with a layman's understanding of the religion.
and maybe it is. I'm not I was 10 years of Catholic school, and I don't know much about Catholics. But from a theology perspective, I think if your religion or one of your religious leaders, let's go with one of your religious leaders, is saying that you should just stand there and die in one of these events and just trusting God, I would maybe consult a different religious leader, talk it over with them, consult yourself, maybe pray about it. Go read into the Bible and see if that backs that up. I certainly don't think that is a thing that Christianity teaches, is that you should just be a willing victim to the slaughter like this. But yeah, that's something that I think you guys should, if that's something that you're concerned about, that's something that you should probably discuss with another faith leader, or at least get a second opinion on.
I think you should be pretty skeptical of any belief system that tries to strip you of your right to defend yourself.
Yeah.
Personally, that goes for any belief system.
Well, any belief system that says, it's not that it's not okay to die, but that it's okay to be passive about your death, to just willingly let it happen like that in a violent way. I don't think that's a good thing to advocate. Maybe if that's your religion, you discuss it with your religious leaders, you find it in your heart that's what you should do, then that's what you should do. But I don't necessarily. I think that you should at least question it at first. You need to be doing some deep soul searching as to whether or not that is something that you believe.
Yeah. Somehow I feel the members of this church would probably not be willing to die just to support this pastor's politics.
Yeah, I think that some of the think of the children. I think some of those children would be very happy that, because I remember in that video of the shooting in Texas, there was immediately after, there was a lot of children being shuttled out of the church as quickly as possible. I think I counted like 5 or 6, and I think that those are. I can't imagine a religion saying, okay, yeah, it's cool for just don't even step in. Okay, maybe it's fine. Maybe it's within a religion to say, okay, don't step in to save yourself. Don't kill someone else to save yourself. But I can't imagine it's like, okay, just stand there and watch your children get shot. That's above and beyond. Just
out of practicality, though, like as a religious leader, the shepherd of the flock, I guess, seems pretty inefficient to not try to protect them, because you're not going to have a flock anymore.
This may be an offensive analogy, and I apologize, but if you are a shepherd of a bunch of sheep and you see a wolf in the flock, you don't just stand there and watch it eat all your sheep.
Yes, you do. It's the moral thing to do. You let the wolf eat. It's hungry, okay?
Dyer's like, I changed my stance on this entirely. But yeah, you don't just as the shepherd of your flock, though, you don't just stand there and watch them all get killed. Or
you're there to scare off the wolves. That's why they had those friggin' canes, such.
Is your nose still hurt?
Yes. All right. So the point being of discussing this is, yet again, we have every freaking day there is lots of defensive uses of a firearm. Way more, in fact, than there are actual crimes committed with firearms. So this is a great example of how every time someone says they want to restrict access to firearms, not just ban them, but restricting them, making them expensive, making bullets expensive, making special hoops people have to jump through, other than making sure that they are legally allowed to own one. Any barrier you create to owning a firearm is essentially making it more difficult for someone like these people that had their lives saved having that firearm, which means there's a higher chance that these people, instead of being people who defeated a criminal, they could have been a victim that was either assaulted, murdered, raped, or had their belongings stolen from them. Your advocacy for this gun control is an advocacy of making these people into victims.
Yeah, and I don't want this to sound like I'm talking about trading lives, but to an extent, I guess I am. And I think our worst mass shooting that we've had was either Pulse nightclub or Vegas, which I think we're up in the high 50s for people killed. But we're talking about 70 to 80 to 100 lives saved every day through the defensive use of a firearm. So, obviously no one is ever advocating for mass shootings. That's an absurd position that the left seems to have all the time, is that if you support guns, you support mass shootings. But we have a mass shootings worth of people saved every day by using firearms. I think that's pretty incredible, and it's obvious that these onesies, twosies, just a couple people at a time here, but several times per day. I don't think that makes the value, because the lives were saved over the course of the entire day instead of all at once. I don't think that makes them any less valuable. And if the media is very upset about 50 people dying in one incident, they should be equally upset about 50 people dying in 50 incidents. And I think that that's why we're covering. That's why we're going to be covering this every week, as going through this, just to remind us over and over and over again that every day there's a mass shooting's worth of people that are saved. And that's quite incredible.
Yes, and that's 72 right now, but these this is just one day since the day that we're referencing. There's more stories added over time for each day. So I just a while ago, there was another like 20 or so that were added 2 days later from the day we referenced, right? So it could be a lot more than 72. It's just 72 so far. I just want to push that. There's roughly 500,000 at a minimum a year. So, yeah. Those are all victims you could have made. Anyways,
great. Don't be a
so
victim.
that's all for today's show, I believe, right? So thank you very much for everyone. If you are watching us on YouTube or anywhere else and you haven't followed us yet, please drop us a follow. Very much appreciate all the people who did follow us so far for the show. I'm going to release the chest real quick and distribute the treasure chest awards. We got 43.
It looked like you
Lino
released the chests earlier on. Oh, you mean the Lino chest? Okay.
What do you mean?
There was a storm of chest gifts in the.
Oh, those chests I will release all the time.
Yes, there was a lot of chests in chat earlier.
You guys don't know. I am a. Wait, Howie, you just followed us?
Howie, dare you? Beast.
Did you unfollow us and follow us again?
You just want attention. Beast of Burden Bear, you're new. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Howie just thought he was following. All right. If you guys are watching and you think you're following, check.
Yeah, please follow. Oh, Trevor got 11.9. God, he's busy. And Cece got second. That's pretty good.
There you go.
All right. Thank you all. And we got another one. Thank you, Viking. I guess we should keep talking for a little longer and let people keep joining. If you're watching us on YouTube, please follow the link to the description to D Live and follow us there, because we're not long for this world on YouTube. And if you want to keep seeing our content, you can see it here. And we will see you guys. Our next show will be on Wednesday, and we're probably doing some games tonight, right?
That is accurate.
All right. So you guys like Quiplash? You're in the right place. Or what game are we doing? We doing Quiplash?
We can do Quiplash.
Let's do Quiplash.
We'll do Quiplash. All right, we'll be back in about 5 to 10 minutes. And we'll be playing Quiplash. Right here. See you guys soon.
Direwolf out.
Travis signing off.
Yes, game. Boobs.
Oops, that was not the right button.
Welcome to the Dire Wolf Show, where we believe that America is exceptional and that our constitutional rights should never be infringed. I am Dire Wolf. On our show, we bring you the truth and debunk fake news. If you love laughing at the insanity of the regressive left, sit back and relax. Boy, do I have a show for you.